On our level, it's very, very hard to judge who has the power to perceive or to means to extricate or reveal Dharma teachings. It's very, very hard. So what happens is that there's a tradition in Tibet of Dharma teachings where highly evolved masters have very powerful clairvoyance. And you say, but that's not just in Tibet. There are other countries except Nostradamus who can see way into the future, it's said, right? So in Tibet they have that kind of power that they can see way into the future. Highly evolved means the power of clairvoyance. And so what happens is that they know that when they arrive at this time, they arrive at this time, they arrive at this time, they're going to come to this juncture where they need this help, that this spiritual discipline, this spiritual practice, this particular meditation will help to counter these kind of forces at this time. So what they do is, if they rely on human people, it will be very unsure because the human line can die, or they don't pass it correctly, they don't do it well, or they lose it, so that the teachings can be lost. So what they do is that these masters hide these teachings in the 5 elements. It can be hidden in the air, in certain people's minds. Some can be hidden in certain reincarnated minds. Means certain Rinpoches are reincarnated, so if they reach their 8th incarnation, it will manifest. It will open up. Some is hidden in the rocks, some in the stones, some in the mountains, some with certain deities, some with nagas. It's hidden all over the place at a certain time to be revealed. And it's like a parent. I mean, I saw on the Oprah show where there was this mother who was dying of cancer, and her daughter was like really small. And she made hundreds of videotapes. And it became very big in the United States, but she made hundreds of videotapes to raise her daughter since she wasn't going to be around. So it was very touching, and through the whole thing, everybody in the audience, Oprah, me, everybody was crying because this mother loved her daughter so much, and she wanted to be there for her, but she couldn't be. She knows she's going to die because her cancer was terminal. So she prepared her videotapes from the daughter at this age, her birthday, the messages, when she reached maturity, when she became a teenager. She talked about her first boyfriend, and it was very beautiful. And she talked about, school, and she talked about problems she come up with, about accepting yourself. And then she talked about your first date, and she talked about her getting married, and then she talked about her kids and how to raise them. And she gave all these advices of what a mother would have given her daughter if the mother had lived to see the daughter's maturity. And it was hundreds of videotapes. And some of the videotapes, the mother was just crying and crying and crying. And some of the mother was laughing and laughing and laughing. And through this videotape, you saw the love that this mother, the compassion, the love, the care she had for the daughter. And the daughter grew up totally normal, totally fabulous, because why? Her mother was with her all the time. So they played some of these videotapes with Oprah, and it was so touching because even her first date. So when this girl was experiencing her first date, her father actually got out that videotape and played it. He said, look, this is your mother's advice for your first date, because this is what your mother went through when she went on her first date. And then, so she was talking, boys are like that, they're like this, you're dressed like this, just be yourself, don't worry. And it was so beautiful. So this girl was getting this advice from her mother from beyond the grave in the form of videotape. And when she was graduating in high school, the mother had a beautiful message about her graduation, and how she should feel, and how proud she should feel, and all that stuff, and how she wishes she was there to hug her and give her a kiss. It was just so incredible. Just incredible. And so the mother prepared every stage of her daughter's life with hundreds of videotapes, recorded, because she couldn't be there for her daughter. And her daughter totally grew up, totally normal, better than most of us, because she just felt her mother's love and care. And they were playing this on Oprah. Everybody in the audience was like, so this mother spent the rest of her days, she had like 1 or 2 years to live, right? Taping and preparing herself for her daughter. Because she says, if I had lived, I would have been there for her. If I lived, I would have been there to raise her. If I lived, I would have made sure that everything would have been fine for her. But I can't, so I can't just be depressed and be sad and not do anything. I'm going to do something. So that was her idea, to do something for her daughter. And I was like, wow, in the face of death, she can do that. Incredible. It was just incredible. So my point is what? Is that if a normal, ordinary mother can prepare all these incredible teachings for her daughter about life, to prepare the daughter, Why can't high lamas prepare teachings for the future? Definitely high lamas can prepare. Now, the question here is not, it's not a videotape. It is not so simple as, your first date or, your first prom, or it's not as simple as that. It's more about spiritual attainments where we need to make sure it's correct because we're going to commit. So what happens, there were great lamas in the past who can do that, who can plant termas, but within the Gelugpa school of Buddhism, it is very stringent. And I'll tell you why. Because there were a group of people who abuse that system, who use the terma system. Dharma, actually it's pronounced Dharma. That means to reveal, to show. Who use the Dharma system to trick people, to preach false things, and to actually use false teachings and to get help, money, assistance, respect. It was abused. So by the time Lama Tsongkhapa came, he said no. He says the previous Dharma teachings that exist in blah blah is fine. Because some of the teachings that he extracted were Dharma teachings. Why? Because Lama Tsongkhapa, what he did was incredible. Is that he received teachings in the three existing lineages and combined it together. But how he did that was this: if it was philosophical or debate or textual, he would actually go back to the source. Where it came from, trace the source, and then say, okay, that's not true. If the source died at some point, even the text was fabulous, you would use it. Because it doesn't trace back to Lord Buddha or one of his great sons, such as Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, or Ashwagosha. It doesn't go back to him. So when it doesn't go back to him, we say no. Even if the text was wonderful. Why? The text might be wonderful, but the lineage is broken. So there's no blessings. So that's one. Second, on the tantric text or the meditational text, Lama Tsongkhapa himself would take the texts. So he would have like 3 or 4 traditions of Hirupa texts. And I'm telling you, the Hirupa texts are like that. They're huge. And he would actually go into meditation on them. He would go on a retreat on them. And when he would do everything that was required in meditation and retreat. And when he did everything that was required, when he received signs and indications as it said in the text, he would say, this text is superior. It's very good. For Dharma teachings within our Gelugpa school of Buddhism, it's not acceptable. If someone comes out and says this in the monastery, it will not be acceptable. And that's I just have to tell you the bare facts. Why? Because some people in the monastery, while I was there, and I'm going to tell you about this. I'm not going to give any names because I don't want to be penalized. For example, there are 3 types of Hirupa teachings among the many that Lama Tsongkhapa proliferated. Lama Tsongkhapa's personal Hirupa practice was according to the Luipa tradition. Then there was a Luipa tradition, there was a Dribupa tradition, the 5-deity Dribupa tradition, there was the Napopa tradition, the 62 deities. And so Lama Tsongkhapa's personal was Luipa 62 deity practice. So Luipa is according to the Mahasiddha Luipa, Luipa. So he had the Luipa 62 deity Hiruka. He also practiced the Hiruka Dribupa, Drilpupa, which is the Mahasiddha Dribupa tradition, 5 deities. And then the last one that he practiced was Decho Napopa, Nakpopa. So the Hiruka Napopa was again 62 deities. These were the 3 traditions. Out of these 3 Hiruka traditions that was extracted from India and from the different lineages, the one that he received the most signs, most dreams, most auspicious, and most attainments and most results was the 62 deity Hiruka. So because of this practice, today in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's monastery, Namgyal Monastery, in Gyudur Tantric College, in Gyume Tantric College, in Ganin Shartse Monastery, these 4, they practice the 62 deity Hiruka of Luipa. So the other 2 are given, like from Swaminji, I received most of these. But the one that we're encouraged to practice is the 62 deity Luipa. Why? Because from Lama Tsongkhapa's examination, A, the lineage was unbroken. Completely unbroken. So from this Lama to this Lama to this Lama to this Lama to this Lama, it was completely checked and unbroken. There was no breakage of lineage at all. So it was alive, it was active. For blessings, no problem. Number two, the way it was set out, as compared to the other two, will be more appropriate for today's people. Today's attachment, today's materialism, today's difficulties, it will be more appropriate. So you see, but all three are Hiruka. It's the same deity, but it's a method of meditation which was more appropriate. Like today, the way we wash clothes and the way we wash clothes 100 years ago will be different. Much more different. Today we have fabric softeners and all that stuff, and to kill germs, and we have bleach to make clothes whiter and color. Right? But the clothes is exactly the same. So the way Lama Tsongkhapa did that was, he personally himself examined the practice, he checked the lineage, he checked it page by page, he went into meditation, and he checked his results. When he got his results, then he taught. And again, which Hiruka is the best is not which Hiruka is the best. Hiruka is the same, but which method will be more appropriate. In the future, it is definitely possible that Hiruka's practice will transform and change according to the people. But that will require a Lama that will prove his practice by study, by knowledge, and by practice. So in the Gelugpa tradition, in Ganden, I could be wrong, but I've never heard of something based on Dharma teachings. Why? Because the Dharmas, or the Dharma Terdens, the ones who Terdun is the ones that discover the Dharmas. Terdun is referring to a person, a noun. Cannot be verified. Cannot be verified. And so while I was in the monastery, there was a particular monk there who told people he saw Tara. He was telling everybody he saw Tara. He made a big throne for himself. He would sit down there and Tara would come to him. And he would tell everybody he saw Tara. And then he said that Tara's connected to him from his previous lives. And he would compose books. He would compose books that were spoken to him by Tara. So he came to my house once and he offered me a book. He was very respectful, came in with a contents and offered me a book to read at it. And I asked Kansurji about it. Kansurji says, well, it looks pretty good. It's not bad. But he says it can't be used because his source is Tara. And I said, why is that? He says, it's because we can't verify if he saw Tara or not. And the way Kansurji said it was very beautiful. It wasn't to put the monk down. It wasn't to put the monk down. Because the monk could have been very attained. He could have been. But you see, that's not going to hold water. Why? Because we already have many great existing texts that we don't need a further text to elucidate what we already have in the monastery to study to understand. So you already have a great curriculum. You don't need to add another one just because he said that Tara said so. So that was kind of like a Dharma in Ganden, and that was why I was there a few years back before I came to Malaysia. So my point to you is, within our school of Buddhism, Dharmas are not accepted. Why? What is accepted is something that the great Sanghas and the great masters and scholars debate. And they debate until the point where there's no doubt. And when the Sangha and the masters and the great abbots all debate together and they come across it to be sound and clear, it is accepted. So within the Gelugpa school of Buddhism, it must be debatable, it must be accountable, must have a lineage, and it must be proven, not by one or two, but the whole Sangha. Even the Dalai Lama says, hey, I don't have the power to change anything. If I want to change anything along with the monk vows or anything like that, I'll have to have all the Sanghas get together and talk about it, discuss, and debate, and then come out with a conclusion. So by the power of the Sangha, things can be changed. Otherwise, one person cannot, no matter how incredibly advanced they are. So my point to all of you is this, is that Shugun Tumba, now listen very carefully. We look at all his other works. We look at all his other practices. We look at how many people he's benefited. We see the text that he's written. We see the lives that he has touched. And we see his movement growing and benefiting many. On that basis, we can say his dharma must be all. For example, Songramji himself. There were certain texts that were missing. And they had certain chants and melodies that were lost. So what Songramji did is incredible, is that he actually propitiated his deity, his idam, and he went to sleep. But when he woke up, he wrote the sounds because in his sleep, he would hear, in his dream state, he would hear the Dakini singing and telling him how to read. So when he rewrote it and he sang to the older monks, they were shocked. This is what they heard before in Tibet. But no one could write it down. Some monks heard this part, they heard this part, but they couldn't remember it. He completely recounted it from a dream. Another time, I was in Borobudur with His Eminence Hanshin Tuchi. And I was walking around with him, and there were hundreds of them. You know, all his disciples, and all the Italians, the Germans, and all these Europeans there. And then there was me. And we were walking around Borobudur. And one of Rinpoche's previous lives is an architect of Borobudur. That's in his lineage. So what he was telling me is we were walking to Borobudur, it was early in the morning with me offerings. He slipped. He says, I composed this new text. He told me himself. He said, I composed this new text. I said, really? What is it? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, where'd you get the source of it? I wasn't questioning, I was just very fascinated. And he said, I heard the Dakini singing to me from within the mandala, which is the Borobudur mandala. He says, I heard these ladies singing to me, and I recorded it in my mind. I made a report down. And then he went, he said, and he caught himself. I said, tell me more. I said, no, nothing. That's what he told me. So I know even today, Gelugpa lamas or lamas all have terma revelations. They all have things locked away here and there where they can tap into because they have these supernatural powers. I mean, that's the fact. But within the Gelugpas, you don't believe it. Why? You have very valid texts already. You have very valid texts that you can study, that you don't need a new one. You don't need someone to teach you how a vision Gelugpa and teach you a new Gelugpa sub. You don't need it. Look, if I was to come out with a new Gelugpa sub, I bet you most of my students say, okay, let's do it. But we don't need that. We don't need that because it's already proven what we have is good enough. That's one. Second is, within the Gelugpa tradition, if we need to do that, we need to actually have the approval of the Sangha. Within the monastery, where they debate it out, they talk about, they check it to make sure. Why? When the great scholars and the masters examine all directions, it's all right, because they all have their attainments, they all have their learning, they all are experts in their field. It's like when a professor of physics comes out with a new thesis, and the other professors debate it out. It's like when a doctor comes out with a new formula, the other doctors debate it out to make sure from all angles that it is free of fault. Right or not, in normal world. It's the same thing with the texts. The third thing is, termas is not specific of a lineage. A certain lineage accepts it more than other lineages. So if you say that only one lineage can have that and the other lineage cannot, then you're limiting the power of the lamas. How come a lama of one lineage doesn't have this kind of power and the other one does? That's impossible. It's impossible. It's illogical. That would mean that the different attainments from different lineages would be different. So that means a Gelugpa Buddha would be different than a Nyingma Buddha. That would be impossible, right? We're going to need different tankas for everybody. That's not logical. So another thing is, how do we verify people like you and me cannot? There's no way we can. We need the power of the Sangha, the masters. So, for people like you and me, I would not recommend a tarot practice. I wouldn't go for it. That's it. I mean, that's what I said earlier. It's going to sound a little controversial. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. But for somebody like Chogyam Trungpa, where he's proven the benefit, when he wants to reveal that to his students, I'm sure it has benefit. You understand? So if you want a straightforward answer, I can't give you a straightforward answer. I have to give you this way. But within my school of Buddhism, no. It would not be acceptable. It could be wrong. I mean, there could be real termas that's not accepted. It will be a loss, but then, that's part of the game, isn't it? You understand that?
Michi, is it like what you say, the Sangha have to confirm it? I remember in the...
Not just normal Sangha. I'm talking about the masters like Ganen Chiruji, the Lord of the East, Lord of the West, and advocates of the three monasteries. All these great masters. I'm not talking about not just normal Sangha. You and me, we will get robes, we approve. Okay, you can then do this robe, we'll go back to our fun. I don't think so, brother.